Well, between high interest rates and high inflation, a lot of Canadians are feeling stretched. Here's a look at our debt burden by the numbers. Overall, consumer debt in Canada is still at a record level, $2.3 trillion in third quarter. That's up 7.3% from the year before. A lot of that is in the form of mortgages, but non-mortgage debt is growing fast. At $21,183 per person in the 3 months ending last September, with credit card spending in the quarter jumping 17%. How we manage that debt is a concern. Average payments are down, and the number of households behind by up to 60 days is rising. It is still, though, below pre-pandemic levels. But the number is climbing for those in a vulnerable state when it comes to paying their mortgage, or anyone whose payments are 25% or more of their income. Now, 27% of new mortgage borrowers are in that shape, compared to 12% before rates began to rise. All of this has increased the number of people throwing in the towel. Consumer insolvencies rose 9.5% in the year leading up to last November, though they are still well below pre-pandemic levels, 27% below, in fact. Business insolvencies are faring worse, not only rising, but now 20% above the November 2019 levels. The good news about insolvencies, if there is some, a growing number are now consumer proposals. This is a less onerous form of insolvency, and it's growing at 18.9% in the year leading up to November. Things like steering people to a proposal instead of declaring bankruptcy can have a lot to do with letting people know their options. So what else do we want people to know, maybe even long before they get to that drastic a position? Doug Hoyes is an insolvency trustee with Hoyes, Michalos Associates. Doug, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Amanda.
So the rise of consumer proposals, to me, is one example where educating people about their options is a really important factor in helping them take control. When people get to you, they're talking to an insolvency trustee, so things are bad, I'm going to guess. How late is it? How much earlier do you wish you'd heard from people in order to try to help them stave off the very worst?
Well, obviously, the sooner the better. If you've got a medical problem, the sooner you get to a doctor, the better. And it's the same with financial problems, because there's a lot of things you can do before the end of the process. And you're right, a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy is the end of the process. That is the final legal solution. But there's a lot of things you should be thinking about a lot sooner than that. And that's what we talk to everybody about when they come in to see us.
Are there some consistencies, things you wish people knew about debt payment or gaps in their income versus what they owe that you would give them advice on that is kind of broad spread?
Yeah, I think you got to take a step back and look at what's driving it. When someone calls me, I say, well, why are you calling me today as opposed to last week or last year? These debts have been building up. And usually there's some crises happening right now, and they're trying to take action. So, for example, we're getting close to the end of the month. My rent is due at the beginning of the month, but my paycheck doesn't come in until 4 days after the month starts. I'm in a panic now because I know I can't pay my rent. What do I do? And so the natural inclination is to perhaps to rush out and get a fast loan or something, because I've got to get that dealt with, and you end up signing on for something that's far more expensive than what you need. A better option might have been to talk to your landlord and say, hey, I'm going to be 4 days late this month. Can you cut me some slack? And in most cases, that's exactly what they're going to do. So don't rush to the obvious solution. There's often things you can rework and save yourself a lot of trouble in the long run.
And are there places that you would point people for this kind of advice? Really, ideally, well, we're still healthy, right? So we don't need to go to the doctor, as it were. What are the places people can go for kind of free financial advice about some of their options?
Well, you're right. It's very difficult because everyone charges money for everything. So it's hard to get free, unbiased advice. You go to the bank's going to try to sell you their products. You talk to a licensed insolvency trustee such as myself. Obviously, we're always thinking about the consumer proposal at the option at the end. But I can tell you that with licensed insolvency trustees, the law says we cannot charge for any advice until you actually begin the process. So far more than half of the people who contact me and my firm end up getting advice about budgeting, the sort of stuff we've just talked about. So my advice to people would be, make sure you're talking to someone who is regulated, reputable, not just somebody who you saw on the internet, but they've actually got some kind of designation, CFP, LIT, something like that, a chartered accountant, whatever. Know who you're dealing with before signing on the dotted line.
Just a few seconds here, but those loans people go to get, high interest loans, can really trap people in a bad spiral, Doug. What would you say to people about thinking about those loans long and hard?
Short answer is if you don't have to do it, don't. You're better off trying to borrow a few bucks from friends or family, talking to whoever you owe money to and stretching out the payments. That's always a better idea than locking yourself into a massive interest loan.
Doug, so good to have your thoughts. Appreciate your expertise on this.
Thanks, Amanda.
Doug Hoyes is an insolvency trustee with Hoyes, Michalos Associates. Well, one place, of course, vulnerable people do turn when they hit those cash crunches are exactly that, short-term, high-interest loans, payday loans among them. Is there a better way? Well, it turns out there may be. Tate Hackert is the founder and CEO of Zayzoon. Great to have you with us, Tate.
Hey, thanks for having me, Amanda.
So you have a fintech. You do a lot of business in the U.S. The idea here is that people can, working with their employer, access their payday before they've been paid. In other words, take some of the money they've already, so quote unquote, earned, but haven't been paid in a check yet. How does it work? And kind of what is it really replacing when it comes to people's need for cash up front?
Yeah, I mean, you said it quite well. Ultimately, people are getting paid every 2 weeks, typically. We have a solution that allows people to get paid every day if they want, right? But typically what it is people run into shortfalls in between paydays. And unfortunately, the products that are out there just aren't very good for that, right? Historically, you had payday loans, you might have overdraft fees to help cover that short-term need for liquidity. And so really accessing your own pay gives you that relief that you require without actually being predatory to the consumer, right? They're simply getting access to that pay early. And that's really, what earned wage access is.
And of course, one of the things that I think speaks for this as an idea is that the employers are on board. You've got some big U.S. customers, Wendy's is among them, and obviously they've endorsed this for their employees. So they're basically saying, yes, we will let you have your pay early. Do people get into trouble, or is it a kind of a simple system of it's a few days, then they pay their loan back and they move on?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up Wendy's. So Wendy's is an organization, of course, it's a franchise. And so each franchise has to choose to adopt a solution like earned wage access. But we were lucky enough to have a lot of Wendy's use our solution to give their employees access to their wages early. One of the benefits that was so crazy that we never really thought of before was one Wendy's reported an 80% reduction in till theft. So again, going back to that need for short-term relief, employees were actually skimming money from the till to get by until the next payday. And again, introducing this real-time payment system, it allows them to not have to risk that. As far as, to answer your question around employees and is this a way for them to actually get in trouble or is this potentially, something that they could get in trouble with? We definitely don't see that. So we see our surveyed customers reporting, about 90% of them report that we do in fact decrease their financial stress. And ultimately this access to real-time wages is a way to help avoid those other products rather than increase the debt burden to them.
Not a ton of time here, Tate. You are Canadian, an award-winning Canadian fintech firm, but most of your business is in the U.S. Do you see more happening in Canada? Is this a classic kind of, there's just more U.S. adoption of this idea so far?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're a lean, mean Canadian startup, proud Canadian startup, but you need to have focus. It just so happens that we launched in the US. There's a big need for this service down there. We're starting to feel some pull up here in Canada as that pull increases. And of course, we'll be there to fill that gap.
So good to have you with us, Tate. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Amanda. Take care.
Tate Hackert is the founder and CEO of Zayzoon. Coming up, the debate about private delivery in healthcare is raging in Canada, but are we arguing about the right things? That's still ahead. But first, Live Nation and Ticketmaster found out what happens when you tangle with one of the world's most popular singers. Taylor Swift fans broke the internet trying to buy tickets to her upcoming stadium tour in America and laid bare a long simmering rage about the stranglehold on ticket sales. Now Live Nation faces not just public hearings in the U.S. Senate, but lawsuits from Swift fans. This is one anti-competition fight that may be hard to shake off. We're back after this.